Hello, everyone. We are Group 3, and my name is Glavy Font.
My name is Amari Fox.
And my name is Adrian Quinta.
And today we are going to be presenting on cancer and the environment with a focus on chemicals and fine particles in the air. Next slide, please. First, we're going to start with a little bit of background and introduction of what we mean by air pollution and why it matters in the context of cancer. Air pollution is a complex mix of gases and particles, and it comes into two main forms, outdoor and indoor air pollution. Outdoor air pollution is the pollution in the open air, such as fossil fuels, combustions, vehicles, industrial activities, and even wildfires. Indoor air pollution is the pollution in non-ventilated areas, such as burning wood and charcoal for cooking. Now, why does this matter for cancer? Well, both outdoors and indoor air pollution expose people to carcinogenic compounds, which triggers oxidative stress, DNA damage, and chronic inflammation. It also disrupts hormone pathways and promotes tumor growth in lungs, gastrointestinal, brain, and breast. According to the World Health Organization, 90% of the global population lives in areas where air quality doesn't meet safe guidelines. Outdoor air pollution causes an estimated of 4.2 million premature deaths per year, with nearly 90% of those occurring in low and middle income countries, as we can see in this image. Next, we're going to move into the key pollutants of concern. All right. For the key pollutants of concern, we have PM 2.5, nitrogen dioxide, volatile organic compounds, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and ground level oxygen. For PM 2.5, these are fine particles small enough to reach deep into the lungs and enter the bloodstream. It is produced by burning fossil fuels, vehicle exhaust, wildfires, and even indoor cooking. It is strongly linked to lung cancer, but also plays a role in breast, gastrointestinal, and brain cancer. Nitrogen dioxide comes mainly from traffic and industrial source, and it is linked to both lung and breast cancer. Volatile organic compounds include chemicals like benzene, formaldehyde, and toluene. These are found in the fuel factory and smoke and household products. Many volatile organic compounds are confirmed carcinogens. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons come from burning wood and oil. They can disrupt hormones and cause DNA damage, increasing risk for breast and reproductive cancer. Ground level oxone is a key part of smog and can worsen lung inflammation. Now we are going to focus on how outdoor air pollution contributes to cancer. Lung cancer has the clearest link. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies PM 2.5 and diesel exhaust as Group 1 carcinogens. That means they are known to cause cancer in humans. A study showed that for every 10 micrograms per cubic meter increase in PM 2.5, lung cancer risk increased by 8 to 14%. Beyond lung cancer, outdoors air pollution is linked to breast cancer. Pollutants like nitrogen dioxide and PAHs may affect hormone regulation in breast tissue. Gastrointestinal and liver cancers are also associated with air pollution. Inhaled particles are absorbed into the blood and can reach the digestive organs.
And now we're going to go ahead and speak about the links between indoor air pollution and cancer. Now, diving into it, we are going to explore the sources uh, of these pollutants, such as burning wood, charcoal, coal, dung, kerosene, and of course, all of these would be toxic doing in unventilated indoor spaces. Cooking and heating with solid fuels are major contributors. Now, regarding the carcinogens that are released during the burning of any of these kinds, would be such things such as fine particulate matter, uh, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and volatile organic compounds, carbon monoxide, nitrogen, and sulfur oxides, formaldehyde, benzene, and the links in cancer that we've seen. The data shows that there are deaths ranging near 265,000 annually. Just in these particulate matter cases, and over 170,000 indoor radon and fuel smoke cancer-linked deaths in 2019 alone. Other associations are cervical, oral, osteophageal cancers, have all been linked to household air pollution. Now, the molecular mechanisms of cancer. Oxidative stress and DNA damage, ROS generated by PAH metabolism and PM exposure, cause DNA adducts, um, mutation, genomic instability, chronic inflammation. These are persistent pollutant exposure triggers, inflammatory signaling, promoting DNA damage, cell proliferation, angiogenesis. Endocrine disruption is very prominent. Air pollutants, PAHs, pesticides, plasticizer, mimic slash block hormones, altering signaling and elevating risk for hormone sensitivity, such as breast or thyroid, and non-hormone sensitive cancers. Some of the neurological and immune pathways would be pollutants impairing immune surveillance. They alter brain immune crosstalk, and they disrupt cytokines and affecting cancer surveillance. Now, when we talk about the vulnerable populations and global disparities, the first thing we're going to talk about is the disproportionate burden. Nearly 3 billion people use polluting household fuels, which is alarming. Between 3 and 3.8 million annual deaths, primarily in LMICs, women and children especially, are burdened by cooking tasks and exposure. So they organically face higher risk. Children are at risk. Rapid lung and immune developments make children more susceptible to PM, VLCs, indoor PMs linked to respiratory illnesses and carcinogenic pathways in early life. Now, when we look at the difference between urban and rural dynamics, the rural areas have heavy use in biomass fuels and poor ventilation, which is an elevated indoor risk. And urban areas are higher exposure to PMs and NO2 near traffic or industrial areas. Urban mobility and low income status obviously will amplify exposure disparities.
Okay, now we can move on to the high impact findings. So, for the first point, the International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified outdoor air pollution and matter PM2.5 as a group 1 carcinogen. So, to elaborate more on that point, air pollution is no longer just an environmental issue. It's actually now a public health crisis. And so in 2013, the International Agency for Research on Cancer officially classified outdoor air pollution as a group 1 carcinogen, meaning that the scientific evidence has found that pollutants can cause cancer in humans. And then for our second point, the World Health Organization, safety standards are exceeded by 99% of the global population who experience 4.2 million premature deaths annually, with most cases occurring in low and middle income nations. So the matter, especially PM 2.5, referring to that particle in particular, with the diameter being so small, only being 2.5, that's why it is currently the greatest concern because it is so small that it bypasses like our body's natural defenses. So it can easily go into the lungs, it can go into our bloodstream, and that can cause like, inflammation and can affect, our, hormone signaling. And this causes different pathways in our body to develop cancer. For the next point, cancer burden. So the risk of lung cancer rises between 8 to 14% when PM 2.5 exposure reaches a certain point, and the combination of PM 2.5 and oxide, I don't ever know how to say the word, nitrogen dioxide, sorry, it disrupts hormone signaling, which can lead to like higher breast cancer risks and things like that, as well as that gastrointestinal tract and liver develop cancers because PM enters the bloodstream, and the use of biomass fuels as like a cooking method leads to lung and cervical cancer in women through indoor air pollution. So there's like two ways that our body can actually get cancer, outdoor and indoor. So home air pollution results in more than 3.8 million annual deaths, according to the World Health Organization. And inadequate ventilation and cooking fuels in LMICS creates a disappropriate impact on women and children. So, studies have found that for every 10 micrograms, like per cubic meter, increase in PM 2.5 exposure, that there's like an 8 to 14% increase of lung cancer, which is like actually pretty alarming, because this correlation holds like true to even people that don't even smoke, suggesting that like air pollution is one of the leading causes the leading cause of lung cancer globally. So the risk is like not only limited to the lungs, but also the exposure to nitrogen dioxide, because of like vehicles and industrial activities and things like that is like also associated with breast cancer. And it was found through these like research findings that this could be because related to like traffic related air pollution can interfere also with the endocrine system, which is really interesting, altering women's estrogen and breast tissue. And then pollution also affects the organs that we don't typically associate with air exposure, like our GI tracts and our liver. So those are also now being linked to air pollution, that can enter the lungs and travel through our bloodstream to the digestive organs, which can also cause like cell death and inflammation. So, the World Health Organization, when they like conducted this study, they also found that the numbers are staggering globally. So there's some reports that like 99% of the global population breathes air that exceeds the World Health Organization safety guidelines, leading to deaths of premature babies each year. And also like a high increase of cancer overall. So as the industry grows, the industrial industry grows, and poor regulations become more regulated, and we rely more on like biomass fuels to like we increase our chance of getting cancer. And a lot of people also don't realize that indoor pollution is also something that is deadly. Just because we don't go outside doesn't mean that we are not susceptible to, pollutants in the air. So especially in the homes when there's like solid fuels like wood or coal or things like that that we use for cooking or we like heat on a daily basis. This is really common in like many like rural or low income settings. According to the World Health Organization, when they conducted this study, it was also found that 3.8 million people die each year just from the air that they're ingesting from their household. So that was also something really interesting that I found during the study. And it's crazy because women and children are often at a greater risk in the in-home environment, particularly in communities where like women, obviously we do like most of the cooking and taking care of the kids. So that's another reason why there's a greater increase for women to get cancer, particularly like when we ingest like the pollutant in our house because it has been found that women are the ones to cook more. So those were just some interesting things. We can move on to the next slide.
Okay. Yeah, and really quick, just to riff off of what Amari was saying regarding the indoor pollutants, things that are extremely under the radar, things that you wouldn't even think, such as like incense in your home, plugins, candles that are not soy candles. They are terrible, and you're breathing in waxy like particles that are obviously sticking inside the lungs and are also adding a lot to the risk of cancer, lung cancer in particular. I'm going to move on now for you, Amari.
All right, so next we're going to move into prevention and policy recommendations. So my like first point is the World Health Organization air quality guidelines underwent a new review in 2021, which lowered the annual PM 2.5 exposure recommendation. It was also found that other agencies had got together to advocate for more stringent laws on governing benzene and like diesel exhaust and other air pollutants. So to like more elaborate more on that is that fortunately we do have ways that we can prevent cancer causing like a cancer causing environment. And at the policy level, the World Health Organization has updated those guidelines. Um, and this was like a dramatic reduction because from the previous limit of what I think it was like 10 is underscoring how harmful even like low levels of exposure can be as well. So specific interventions is the implementation of ventilation systems, and clean cooking technology should be promoted as well in the household. Sorry, I lost my point. Should be promoted for the use of LMICS. The transition from coal and diesel to renewable energy sources should occur in areas like with high traffic and industrial activity. And then high density cities need to implement pollution like levi's together with urban green zones. And the expansion of low emission zones should be implemented to reduce exposure to vulnerable areas. And then the roles of the healthcare sector is, the evaluation of cancer risk should include air quality screenings as the standard component. And the public needs to be educated about household chemical safeties and indoor pollution. And environmental justice laws should be promoted to address the is existing pollution imbalance. So definitely to elaborate a little bit more on those points. Like unfortunately, few countries have been able to adapt to these standards. And even few are like having trouble, educating their country or their state on, what these regulations are like needed, and it's becoming harder to enforce. So like I mentioned, like tightening vehicle emissions, shifting towards like renewable energy, unfortunately, just isn't something that's available for a lot of countries. So it's been very difficult. And, cities around the world have had success with like these approaches as well. One city that I know right now is really, doing good with their air pollution is London, because they've taken very much like ultra low like emission zones have led to like measurable reductions in like nitrogen dioxide and other traffic related pollutants. Um, but it doesn't just happen at the government level. It's important for us to also be very aware of the household level as well. Especially in developing countries, we have to promote cleaner cooking technologies, and, maybe that includes replacing traditional stove fuels with like wood or coal with cleaner alternatives, which is something that a lot of countries are working on, but not every country is the same. So it has been hard. And another thing that people don't, that is not encouraged is ventilation is something that's also important, like the constructions of homes with better airflows, more windows, chimney systems, like those are things that can definitely help as well. And of course, I think one of the biggest factors that come into play is how healthcare comes into play in like the medical field. It's very powerful. Like hospitals and clinics should begin to like integrate environmental risk like assessments into cancer screenings, especially for high risk communities. Like public health campaigns should like educate people about the risk of like poor air quality and offer practical steps that they can take, such as like using like air purifiers or checking local air qualities, things like that. Um, so yeah, we can go on to the next slide. Thank you. All right, so future directions and research gaps. All right. So, even with all that we know, there are significant gaps in our like scientific understanding and policy response, when it comes to air pollution and cancer. And one of the main areas that definitely needs more research is the mechanistic biology. We know that pollutants like PM2.5 and PAHs cause stress and DNA damage. But we need more detail on how these changes lead to specific types of cancer. So, for example, like breast cancer, colon cancer, thyroid cancer. We also need to understand like why these pollutants are affecting the endocrine system more, which is causing us to like really see a increase in death in women that get cancer. So that's a gap in research that is currently being done. And another major gap is understanding like long-term exposure. Many current studies measure pollution exposure over a shorter period of time. So most of these studies have been conducted over days or months or just a few years. But cancer is something that develops like slowly over decades. So as this becomes something that's a little bit more concerning, we haven't been able to fully understand the risk of, how long the body can be exposed to these type of pollutants before we start seeing, the side effects. And there's, a growing understanding to combine exposures. In real life, people are rarely exposed to just one pollutant. Because we drive, we cook every day. So that is something that a lot of researchers are trying to see if one pollutant is maybe stronger than the other that's causing a worse effect. Is it, are you getting exposed to these pollutants more when you're driving to work or when you're cooking in the kitchen? So these are definitely things that need to be further, like it needs research to be worked on more. And that's another gap that we learned by reading these articles and these research papers. And then also one of the biggest things is the regional like disparities, right, in research. So most of this data comes from America, and like, you know, Europe and like certain parts of Asia, but we never go into places like Latin America or Nigeria, like regions where the environmental health research is very, very limited. and they just don't have as much funding. So these communities also need to be studied and tailored to their unique lifestyle of how they live in their countries. So we can get a better understanding of if it's like genetics or a public health thing. Um, but there is more exciting things that when I did read the article, I noticed that because of AI, we're able to build more predictive models. So like these models could like help identify individuals who are more at risk based on like a combination of like genetics, location, lifestyle, things like that. And this could really pave a way to mend that gap that researchers have been experiencing because of other countries or just, the regional disparities that we face now. And so yeah. Mm, we can go to the next. So, as we like finish our presentation, I'm just gonna go over like some of the major insights we discussed. So now we know that air pollution is not just environmental. It's a powerful issue. It's proven to cause cancer. And not only is there outdoor pollutants, but there's also indoor pollutants as well. And these pollutants can affect the body in several harmful ways, penetrating into the lungs, the bloodstream, causing stress and DNA mutations, disrupting like hormonal signaling in certain individuals, certain females. And we're seeing a lot of it in children and women that typically do stay at home. And this can also promote like chronic issues like chronic inflammation, which can cause tumors and things like that. And then we found out that air pollution is linked to like a range of cancers. So like lung, breast, liver. It's not just one that it's not one cancer that we're seeing consistently. It's different types of cancers. Another thing we learned is like the burden of pollution is like not equally shared. So we have low low income communities, children and women are affected, and then people living in like low middle income countries as well face higher exposure and more severe health consequences. And then we also learned that there are like clear strategies that are being taken to like implement and reduce the exposure, like to implement to reduce the exposure to these pollutants, like from clean cooking, better urban planning, um, tighter emission and regulations, and also like educating the public as well. And then we see with our research gap, especially understanding the effects of like combined exposure, long-term health outcomes, things like that, as well as trying to get more um, research done in other countries that don't have the funding for it. And then we also see a really big increase in these types of environments through AI. AI has been like a big thing that we've been able to use to help us move better, like move forward in research and close those gaps. And so then yes, and that's most of like our presentation, and then we have our references here. And then yeah,
All right.
thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so much for sticking with us. And we hope that this can help in any way, shape, or form moving forward.
Okay.